The pursuit of Lane Kiffin is one of the worst covered events I've ever seen in college football.
You are Locked On Gators, your daily podcast on the Florida Gators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Locked On Gators, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day every day. We are available daily and free every single podcast and on YouTube. Today's episode of Locked On Gators is brought to you by FanDuel. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. So download the app today. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody that celebrates it. If you're not an American and you don't celebrate Thanksgiving, then happy Thursday, right? I am Brandon Olsen, a lifelong Florida Gators fan. Find my written work about the Florida Gators with swampsignal.substack.com. And there's some stuff that we need to talk about with this Lane Kiffin coaching search. That has been driving me crazy. I've been very open with, social media on the Insider program, on Discord, on this show. I've been very open with the, I don't even know, just the crappy job that's been done with so much of this. And I think that this will hopefully be a lesson for a lot of people, but I don't think it actually will be one. Hopefully it will be, but I think a lot of people don't care as long as, the clicks pay the bills, which is how it works for a lot of places. And I think that that's what leads to this awful reporting around the Lane Kiffin situation. First off, let's acknowledge the absolute truth here that we don't actually know at the time of recording this late on Wednesday night. We don't know, or technically Thursday morning, we don't know what Lane Kiffin's going to do at this time, right? Just to revisit things, from the moment Florida fired Billy Napier, it was pretty public that Florida was going to target Lane Kiffin to replace Billy Napier. That was very public. That was very out there. It's like, hey, Lane Kiffin's target number one. And he's going to be that until he's not. Like, until he says no, he's going to be target number one for Florida. You can go back a few weeks ago. I guess we'll say like 3 weeks at this point, whenever Brian Kelly got fired. Before Brian Kelly got fired, Florida was, at that point, sitting pretty, right? It was Florida or Ole Miss. Those seemed to be the two options that were available. Brian Kelly got fired. And then LSU threw their wrench into it. And, if you could dodge a wrench, you could dodge a ball, right? And so Florida need to dodge that wrench. And then LSU got into this. And since then, if you speak to someone on the LSU side, they're going to tell you LSU feels really confident. Honestly, I'll say this. Too confident. Like, if we're going to be honest, and we'll talk about the facts in a little bit, but too confident. The fact that it's been every day now, basically, and we get someone from LSU going, a deal's done. The deal's done. Yeah, we got him. Ladies and gentlemen, we got him. Deal's done. Again today. Announcement coming again today. And then every night it's like, oh, not today. Not happening today. So really interesting there. I just want to throw that out there. That seems to be how it happens with the LSU side of they're really confident. And look, I'm not saying confidence is a bad thing, right? Because Florida side of things, also very confident. They've just not been as loud. I want to make that clear. Like I know that there's this moral high ground that a lot of Florida fans are trying to take with just the confidence. And I don't think that that's a fair take to have if you are equally confident about Florida, right? Like if you're like, oh, LSU's so confident, he's coming to Florida, these idiots. You're no better. You got it on a different side, on a different school. That's it. And so we could say that, right? That's not my issue with it. My issue with most of what we're hearing right now is that a lot of national reporters have been trying to get information from Florida side of things and have been, we'll say, unsuccessful at doing that, right? A lot of national reporters have been trying to get something from Florida, and it's very quiet. This is one of the very few times where a Florida anything really, coaching search, recruiting search, anything has been pretty quiet from Florida side, right? And I've been very open about this for years now that Florida has a leaky issue where there's always Florida fans get hyped up about something. Or actually, let's backtrack for a second. Florida will be trying to make a move, and Florida's insiders will hear about it and tell their circles and their fans, and then word spreads. That's how college football works. We all know this at this point. And then word spreads, and then it backfires, right? That's how it happens a lot with Florida recruiting, right? Is that then things backfire. And they backfire for different reasons, right? And you could say loose lips sink ships. Like you could do that, and you're not wrong, by the way. But things will backfire on Florida kind of often in that scenario. I have no problem admitting that, no problem acknowledging that. I believe that to be the case often, actually, is that when people start talking, things go poorly, which is why I generally take the approach of I'm not saying any details about anything until they're public, because I'm not going to be the guy that ruins it for Florida. And this is the one time in a very long time that things have been quiet for Florida. That Florida's not leaking things, they're not reporting a bunch of things, but that doesn't mean that Florida's not doing anything. I think that's the big difference here. And I do think that one of the reasons you can look at why things are quiet on Florida side of things is that this isn't the typical group that leads things, right? First off, Billy Napier's Army, and we've spoken about this with people before, Billy Napier's Army, too many people in the sense that it's great to have all that manpower, but when all those people know things, someone's going to say something to someone, and then that someone's going to say something, and that's how things spread, right? So when you have that many people, there's going to be leaks. This above what a lot of those people get to say, do, have opinions about, or even know about. On top of the fact that it is being done through a coaching or through a search firm right now, right? Turnkey ZRG has taken the lead on this coaching search. And I think it's important to acknowledge that they are known for doing things quietly, right? And I want to make this clear as well. I'm not saying that because Turnkey is known for doing things quietly and Florida side of things is quiet, that means Lane's going to be a Florida Gator. I don't do that whole I'm going to connect those dots and be that stern about it. No, I just think that that's part of the reason why Florida has been quiet. And like I've mentioned, national media has been trying to get information from Florida side of things, right? And they're not getting much. And that's kind of where some of my issues really start with this coverage. Because for Florida Gators fans, I've said this before, I've said this 1,000 times. I wrote about it on Monday. I still believe at this point in time that Lane Kiffin is going to be the head coach at the University of Florida. I'm not saying that's a guarantee. I'm not saying that that's definitely happening. I'm not doing any of that. I'm saying that based on what I've been told, who I've been told things by, and what I've pieced together, I believe that Lane Kiffin will be the next head coach at the University of Florida. That does not mean that, if he goes to LSU, I think it's this crazy thing. I think that's very possible as well. I think it's also very possible that he goes back to Ole Miss. I don't think it's likely that he goes back to Ole Miss, but I think it's very possible. And so I don't have a problem with people saying, oh, he's going to go to LSU or he's going to stay at Ole Miss. I have no issue with that. I have no issue with On3 putting out the graphic with, 18, 20 people, whatever the hell it was, all picking LSU, Ole Miss, except for two guys picking Florida and one picking Alabama, one picking Tennessee, I think it was too, as in the Tennessee Titans. No problem with that. Where I do have an issue is when national reporters are trying to get information about Florida, are not getting information about Florida. And I'm not even going to just say it. I'm not even going to just say national. I'm going to include LSU and Ole Miss media in this as well, because they've done it too, where they're trying to get information about Florida, unsuccessful. And so they just go, well, what are people saying? I'm going to run with that. And it makes no sense. And also, if Florida does hire Lane Kiffin, it makes you look like a complete jackass. It's fun, right? Yeah, there's been a ton of just poorly managed reporting around here. And then, like I said, like that's where a lot of my issue lies with this. Like, it's not the fan base. The fan base is supposed to be crazy. It's college football. You're supposed to be freaking lunatics, right? I do expect at least a little bit more from the media, which we have not been given that as fans, as other media. We haven't been given that. And that bothers me a lot, including some of the, what I believe is very skeptical reporting from a few people. We'll talk about that when we get back with this episode of Locked On Gators. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. So even if you miss the start of the game or you want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So, especially on Thanksgiving Thursday, got a ton of football games today, right? We got 3 football games all day. Love it. Head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Thanks again for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day every day. We are available daily and free with us in the podcast and on YouTube. I believe that there's been a ton of failures in the reporting side of things, and I think that some of it comes from intentional misinformation. Okay, I'll say that. I think one of them is intentional misinformation, and I'm going to start with Locked On LSU's Matt Moscona, right? Because yesterday morning, Matt Moscona from Locked On LSU put out reporting that he spoke to, I think he said it was 3 sources, one from LSU, one from Florida, and one unrelated to either school. And the Florida person included said that Florida has conceded and is moving on to their next targets. And let's talk about that for a minute, right? Because first off, it's not true, right? It's just not. I can tell you that off rip. It's not true that Florida has conceded and is backing off and is doing no. Florida's going to be in this until Lane tells him no, or until they feel probably like Lane's actually going to say no, which they don't feel. So I'm going to say that. But I don't think Matt made it up. Okay. I don't. I'm not going to accuse Matt of doing that. I'm not accusing anybody, by the way, in journalism of making things up. I'm really not. Where I do think this comes into play is I don't want to say validity of it. I think validity is a bad word, as is legitimacy, but I can't think of a better word right now. So I'll say the intent of the report, we'll say, right? Because I don't doubt that Matt had someone tell him, hey, Florida's conceding here. They're going to move on to their next targets, right? And I don't doubt that Matt had someone on Florida's side tell him that. I really don't. However, where I get really skeptical of things is that why would a Florida source, who I don't know who Matt's source is, I don't know what level that person is at, how close that person is to the situation. I don't know any of that, right? But I will say that why would a Florida source tell an LSU report? And like Matt Moscona, for those of you who don't know, like Matt has a very big reputation with the state of Louisiana. Okay. I remember when I was getting started in media in like 2019, I had a very small podcast, or 2018, I had a very small podcast. And my co-host was from Louisiana. And I remember when we got Matt Moscona on as a guest, it was this huge thing. And it was great, right? Like Matt was awesome. We had a good time with it. And so I'm not doubting anything with Matt. I do trust him. I do respect him. Big name in the state of Louisiana. So why would a Florida source tell a well-known Louisiana radio talk show host, podcast host, personality that, hey, Florida's conceding, if that's the truth, right? But no Florida media members have been told that, right? I know I haven't been told that. I know if you want to talk about, written reporters, Big J journalists, they haven't been told that. And if they haven't reported it, which kind of tells me they haven't been told that, because that's the kind of thing where if you're told it, you're probably going to report it. The other Florida podcasters haven't been told that. And so unless this is some big conspiracy internally at Florida, where for some reason you're trying to make everybody in Florida media look bad, that leads me to believe that that source lied to Matt, or that source is deeply out of touch. But that's what that leads me to believe more than anything else, is that that source lied to Matt, because I just can't think of the logic behind saying, hey, this Florida source is telling the Louisiana guy the truth, but not any of the Florida people. That just doesn't make sense to me, right? As well as, some of the other deeply flawed reporting of, some of the national guys going with Matt's report, which again, I'm not saying Matt did anything wrong, but other national guys taking what Matt said and just running with it because they don't have Florida sources. And I'm not saying that to be a skeptic. I'm saying we have had multiple national Ole Miss and LSU reporters publicly say, I don't really have a Florida source. I don't really have a finger on the pulse of what Florida's doing. But I'm going to speculate as if that's what it is. That just doesn't make sense to me. It really doesn't. And for the people that go, well, Florida has met with other candidates and Florida has done this. It's like, yeah, well, let's be honest here. First off, the Florida job opened considerably before this thing really heated up, right? I think we could all admit that. It heated up in the past, 10 days is when it really caught fire. Okay. Florida was open well before then. Last time that Florida had a coaching hire in football was Billy Napier. And Scott Strickland handled it and went, Billy Napier, that's my guy. I'm going to go get him. Nailed it. That was it, right? This wasn't this big vetting process. Now you've got Turnkey involved. They're going to vet a bunch of people. They're going to speak to a bunch of people. I don't think most of us have any idea of who has spoken to Scott Strickland directly, Turnkey directly, what that's been like. And we've heard how some of these searches go differently, right? We've heard, I think it was Alex Golesh, who the false report came out yesterday that he was going to Arkansas. But we had heard, Alex Golesh met with Oklahoma State. And Oklahoma State said, no, we didn't meet with Alex Golesh. But Alex Golesh met with Turnkey, who also handled the Oklahoma State hire of Eric Morris. But Alex Golesh met with Turnkey. Not a lie to say I didn't meet with Oklahoma State if you met with Turnkey, right? So that's what I'm saying of I don't know who met with Scott Strickland directly, who met with Turnkey directly. I know some people that met with some people. And so, yeah, Turnkey, Florida, have multiple candidates. I don't think that's a sign of we don't think we're getting him, considering this has been going on for weeks. Florida search has been going on for weeks. Florida has spoken to many candidates. And here's the thing. I'm so happy Florida has talked with multiple candidates. Because as much as we all want Lane Kiffin, or most of us want Lane Kiffin has a very public reputation as someone who is a fickle, attention needy person, right? Ego driven, all that stuff. That's the public reputation. Very possible that he wouldn't want to come to Florida, or that wouldn't work out for whatever reason, right? I would much rather have some candidates lined up in case, like again, Florida still feels confident. Okay. I would rather, even on top of that confidence, I would rather be prepared with other potential candidates instead of just going, we're all in on this one guy. And if it doesn't work, we're going to be left standing there like idiots. And so the reporting of Florida has, spoken to other candidates. That's absolutely true. But here's a fun little fact for you, right? Because, some of us speak to people with Florida ties or Florida sources, however you want to call it, Ole Miss ties, LSU sources, non-school related sources, right? And in the interest of full disclosure, when we're talking about what the University of Florida is doing and what LSU is doing, Florida isn't the only school that has talked to multiple candidates. So maybe LSU is conceding. Who thought about that possibility, right? Never could have been predicted there. So I think that's very interesting that for some reason, Florida being prepared in a coaching search with one of the most unpredictable coaches on the planet, why is that a bad thing? Speaking of bad things and bad human beings, Brian Kelly falls into all of this for LSU. We'll talk about that when we get back with Locked On Gators. The holidays always feel a little easier when you already know the perfect gift, right? And Omaha Steaks makes it almost too simple. So whether you're treating yourself this season or sending something memorable to family and friends, Omaha Steaks delivered handcrafted perfection right to their door. And this week is the best time to jump in, right? Because their cyber sale is here and the deals are huge. So you could save big on unforgettable gifts with Omaha Steaks. Visit omahasteaks.com for 50% off site-wide and an extra 20% off select favorites during their cyber sale. And for an additional $35 off, use promo code COLLEGE at checkout. That's omahasteaks.com, right? omahasteaks.com. Promo code COLLEGE. Terms apply. See site for details. Thanks again for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day every day. We are available daily and free, wherever it's in the podcast and on YouTube. And to wrap up today's show, we are talking about more with this Lane Kiffin ordeal, right? And how some of it just, frankly, doesn't add up to me. Okay? We could talk about Brian Kelly for a hot minute, right? Brian Kelly got fired by LSU with a buyout of $54 million, roughly. Well, I'll say 50 plus million, right? So with a buyout of $50 plus million. And then, first off, I mean, the very next day, was it, that Louisiana's governor was like, everybody's repped by this one agent, and it's a sham, it's a crime, it's whatever Cajun jargon garbage he wants to throw out there, right? And there's that. It's Thanksgiving. I'm not being nice, and that's okay. It's fine. It's fine. Don't worry about that. And then it's like, well, you know what? We're going to challenge Brian Kelly's buyout. We're going to try to fire him for a cause because he's a horrible human being. Newsflash for you, LSU. He was a horrible human being when you hired him. Yeah. Who'd have thought? Who'd have thought? BKKAK. If you know, you know. And so you have that. He was already a horrible person. And you still hired him. That doesn't change anything. And then last night, it's, oh, you know what? LSU, we decided to pay the buyout. Here's the thing. Jimmy Sexton's a smart man, right? And honestly, I don't know, Jimmy. Maybe he's not. Maybe he's just a savant with this, right? He's just really good at it. They got smart people working with him, right? They'll know LSU tried to back out of their contract with this big buyout. And look, yes, LSU agreed to pay it eventually. I don't think LSU agreed to pay it because it was the right thing to do. I think LSU agreed to pay it because LSU went, we're probably not going to get Lane if we don't do this, which I do believe to be true, right? Like the way that I think about it is if I was representing someone which I've represented one person before in my life, I will say that. If I was representing someone and they were going to sign a contract with someone, and that company that wanted to sign the contract, I'm going to use company for example, wanted to sign a contract with my client, I go, okay, well, how reliable are you? And then you go, oh, well, we just had someone with big money, and then we tried to back out of it. I'm going to say, okay, so you're going to try to do that if you fire my client as well. And then you end up paying it, and that's great, but that doesn't change the fact that you tried to make this as difficult as possible so that you could save money, which save money, do you, right? But if I'm a representative and my client's considering a place that is going to back out of a deal and not honor their word, I'm not going to trust them. That's just my take on it, right? I'm not going to trust them at all there. So I will say that. And again, I think that LSU only agreed to pay it because I do believe that that was a hangup, right? Like I do believe that that was part of it because now LSU can at least say, "Hey, we did pay it. You paid it late, but you at least or you're going to pay it, right? You agreed to that late, but you at least agreed to do it." And I think that that's important. I also think about things like Jimmy Sexton has had multiple, the past 4 coaches have been Florida have been Jimmy Sexton clients, right? That's a great reputation. I find it really hard to believe that, again, because here's the reality of the situation as I see it is that Florida feels really confident about this and LSU feels really confident about this, right? I don't think that either of those are unfounded or fake. I think both schools genuinely feel really confident, which means that both schools are probably getting some pretty positive signals from Lane Kiffin's camp, I'll say, right? I'll say camp, which could include him, his agent, his reps, his family, whatever, getting pretty strong signals from Lane Kiffin's camp, right? So I don't think that these confidence that we always hear about confidence, like I don't think that's unfounded at all. I think that they're all very valid. But here's the reality of the situation then is that someone's being lied to. And my take on this for a long time, if you're an LSU person and this is new for you, my take on this for a long time has been, I think that one side is going to look really smart and get to say, I told you so. And one side is going to look oblivious to the world around them and is going to look silly to the world around them, right? Because I think that's how it looks, right? And at this point, if it's not LSU, LSU is going to look really bad because LSU's publicly been running away with this, right? They've been up so much that Florida's conceding. That's a really bad look. Now, when I think about it, if I'm thinking of it as a relationship standpoint, Jimmy Sexton has had now 4 straight Florida head coach clients. None for LSU, by the way. That seems like a really bad and weird decision to let that place that you have a relationship with, like even if this was reversed, even if it was LSU, seems really weird to let them get played here, considering the relationship that you've had with them, right? Unless, of course, Jimmy doesn't know the answer, right? Like this could be like Jimmy might not even know what Lane's going to do. That's an entire possibility here as well. I'm not dismissing this. Like again, none of my issue is with people saying that Lane's going to go to LSU. None of my issue is with the possibility that Lane might go to LSU. My issue is with this awful recording of events, we'll say, right? It's just awful recording of events, whether it's written, whether it's audio, whether it's video, no matter what it is. I think that it's been a very bad time for actual proper journalism because we've got people that are openly saying, I don't have sources. We don't know how Lane Kiffin feels, but this is what's happening. And that's just not true. That's my issue there. I think a lot of this is just people jumping the gun to be first because that's what gets you like the street cred of being first, right? And let's also be real, like people don't care if you're wrong. If you're wrong, people are going to dunk on you for a few weeks maybe, and then for years you'll have someone come and make a comment every now and then, or you'll have when you say something people disagree with, they'll go, oh well, that's the guy that screwed this up here. All that stuff, like you have that. But outside of that, there's no real accountability or reprimand for being wrong or for not doing your job properly. There really isn't. When clicks pay the bills, there's no reprimand for that. And I do think that's disgusting, by the way. Like I've always said, and I know that there's LSU fans that come in here and they go, "Oh, come on, you're just saying these things. Like you're just talking about Lane for clicks. You've lost." Again, I don't think Florida's lost. I don't say things for clicks. In fact, I have people tell me, "Hey, the way you're doing things, you can get way more clicks if you do this." And it's like, I don't care because I care about putting my name on something and being happy about putting my name on something. That's it. So I do think that Lane will end up at Florida. I have an issue with a lot of the reporting around it because I think it's been piss poor. And I do think that's a lot of the logic should point Florida and Lane Kiffin to each other. Again, that's not saying that Lane's coming to Florida. I'm not doing that. I am saying that a lot of logic tells you that they should probably be looking at each other pretty positively right now. And I think that they are, first off. I think someone's being played. Could be, and also I will say that, like, I also include the possibility that maybe no one's being played. Maybe Lane's just telling both sides yes. And he's like, I don't know what I'm going to do for most of this time. But I think at this point, he's probably come to a decision, right? But I think for a lot of this, Lane's told people, yeah, I'm going to do this. And he said the nice thing, the right thing, whatever it may be. And one side's going to be hurt by it, but it's not necessarily done with malicious intent. He's just indecisive about it. I think that's a very real possibility as well, too. But again, I think the reporting's been poor on it. I think that we saw some national media members maybe speak with actual Florida people, like Brett McMurphy tweeted something yesterday, where he tweeted at Old Takes Exposed with the list that On3 put out of the faces, and he was like, "Oh, interesting, keep note, something like that. Be gentle to Old Takes Exposed." Which, by the way, if Lane comes to Florida, Old Takes Exposed will not be gentle with people. Okay? Should I throw that out there? It's Florida alum. Will not be gentle with people. I think that it's incredibly important to acknowledge a couple things here before we wrap up. There's going to be a lot of noise coming out of this. I do not think there are going to be a lot of things that change coming out of this. Like today, you'll hear noise. Tomorrow, you'll hear noise. I don't think there's many things changing at this point. I don't think that there's been things changing for the past couple of days, right? There's been, I'm not saying there's been no changes or no movement, but I'm saying I don't think that there's been these massive momentum swings that you're seeing in media where, they've been typing up LSU this whole time, and then now they're starting to swing a little bit towards Florida. I don't think that's happening right now. I think that we're in the end game here. I think that we're coming up on that, and I think we're going to get a decision. I also think it's incredibly important to acknowledge that it is Thanksgiving. And so I think every single one of you that has ever supported this show, 2025 is already, with a month to go, already our biggest year we've ever had here with Locked On Gators. And I'm incredibly appreciative of that. Like, when I started Locked On Gators, we were not nearly as big as we are presently, right? And this has grown tremendously, and I thank everybody for that. And I'm sure that I will also say this: end of the year, I always get a little sappy about Locked On, right? It's a great opportunity. It's been a great opportunity for me. It's been awesome. I love it here. I intend on staying here for a very long time. And we get these giant growth periods, right, during the end of the season and recruiting and all that stuff, and that's awesome. And I thank everybody here, and I hope that everybody has a very happy Thanksgiving. I hope you have great food if you celebrate Thanksgiving, and even if you don't, I hope you have great food. I hope you're very safe and healthy, and I hope everyone has a great time. And we will be back tomorrow, talk about the game against Florida State on Saturday. We will be live after the Florida State game on Saturday. Depending on if I get back home in time, we may be going live today after the Florida basketball game. And yeah, this is going to be a wild ride. Buckle up. And remember that there's not as many changes as are being reported, right? A lot of these things that are being reported, like a general manager hangup, all happened, been discussed, and are just now getting out there. Don't believe everything. Just put your head down. This will be done soon. Call it a day. and have a great one at that. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day. Every day we are available daily and free. Whether it's in the podcast and on YouTube. We will be back tomorrow with the absolute latest to talk more Florida Gators football. For Locked On Gators, I'm Brandon Olsen. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at WNS_Brandon. And I'll see you all next time.